All right, I saw a pretty good trick on the internet. One of my customers sent it to me, and it was one of those things I saw. I was like, man, that looks so good. I got to try this out and see if it really works. So this is going to be a test the hack. So the hack is pretty cool because when you're done with this, you're going to have pretty much an airbrush looking effect with a, pre-shade type of effect. And here it is in my example that I tried first. And then we're going to go do this whole SD and see if we can't make it come out looking like a really nice pre-shaded kit without using the airbrush. So that's the cool part about this, because a lot of people, you just get in, it's hard to get into the airbrush because it's a big investment and a learning curve. But these real touch markers, which are very underutilized in the Gundam world in general, here's a great use for them. So these, and then this newer product that came out about 2 to 3 years ago, at least in the US, is Mr. Weathering. So these are, I'm guessing, enamel based because they got a stink to them. This one's the multi-white. I believe in the video they use a different one. I will link it in there for you so you can see the, and give credit to the original people who I learned it from. I'm not sure if they're the first people doing it, but this is where I learned it from. But yeah, they use, I think, a different color of white, but same kind of stuff. I'm going to show you 2 techniques on how to put down your real touch marker, the way they did it, and then the way I like to do it. And you're going to shade pretty much the outer, line up the middle, and then you're going to use this to blend back in, which is going to be really nice. You'll start in the middle and blend it out. So let's get to it. This actual SD was donated by a customer to mess around with and try stuff with, and here's a perfect example of trying stuff with it. So in the video, and by the way, these markers, if you've never seen these before, 2 tips. So you have a very large felt tip and then a much more accurate one on the other side. I've done videos using these for streaking. So especially like the brown, you can do like rust streaks or dirt streaks. You can do that gray as well. Using that now, knowing about this stuff in combination would look really good for the streaking as well. So I think these are actually something that I overlooked myself, but are a pretty critical component to new builders who aren't ready to get into full-on weathering and paint jobs. I think these will work great for you guys. So the way they did it, they did this. Now this whole kit has been top coated in matte, so you get a nice amount of texture so that this stuff actually stays in there. Doesn't go all over the place. So that's all it took. Just line it up. I'll get the edges too while I'm at it. No rush. You don't see me like rushing to do this, but rip off. You kind of want this inside part better than the outside because it's got a little more texture, and you just kind of dab it off. So we can get a little closer. And we're going to work from the middle and just keep lining up the middle. So that we have shading on the edges and a lighter middle. Maybe piece might be a little big, so I want to get in here, go harder in the middle, get lighter as I go out. Try to smooth it out, but it's not super essential. You want, a good fade, but it's not, you don't get crazy with it because you're going to have that chance to come back with this and even it all out. I'm going to try to get in here and put down a little streak in here to line this up, right down the middle. Yeah. All right. So as you can see, we already have a very shaded look. A little lighter though. So that is option one of how to apply that. Option two, which I think I prefer a little bit, is take your marker and just basically put it all over the sponge. These are just those cheap makeup sponges you get from the dollar store. I'm sure you get higher quality ones, but no need. All right, and in this case, I'm gonna work from the outside, getting the majority on the edges. And then as it starts coming off of my sponge, I will start working towards the middle. Now, this Gundam was mostly used for ground use, so I was really torn between doing brown as the color or gray. But I went with the gray, and I'm gonna do the yellow and the red parts though with the brown, because I think that might be a nicer effect, but we'll see. What's cool, if I make a mistake, I can get most of it up with a little bit of alcohol, rubbing alcohol, come right off. So now it's a little bit too dark for me, so I'm gonna come in here and line it back up. But hopefully you can see, I feel like it's a little more subtle the way it goes on, because I'm not putting down so much ink in the beginning. Come on with a fresh sponge, try to take a little bit off. Now, this is going to be too extreme. I'm just going to show you. This marker is basically the eraser for the real touches. It will pull the stuff off. But there we go. So that darker side here, this is the original one. And they have two grays. This gray is given a little bit of a purple hue. Not a big fan of that, but it all works out when you start putting the weathering on. You can use black if you want to go really dark, really shade it up. And then there's browns, there's reds, there's greens. They got a lot of colors in this line, so you can go really subtle, like if you're working on a green kit and just do green on green. Might be a little too subtle, but you try it out. Interestingly enough, I should try this, but maybe on another one. You could probably do this with charcoal too. I'm not sure how the charcoal will respond to this stuff, but you could probably do it with charcoal or even graphite maybe. All right, so now I want to get to the bottom because the good stuff's at the bottom in these type of solutions. Really hard to shake them all the way up because the stuff gets trapped at the bottom. You don't want to put too much on at once. We're just gonna do a couple dots, and that's a little too watery. So you need that thick stuff at the bottom. Let's get that up. There we go. Actually, so just a couple dots. Mostly in the middle is where you want your dots at, most of the focus. Try to catch this little edge here. Now I'm going to come out with a Q-tip and just blend this in. So I'm getting a fairly fresh white in the middle, blending it towards the edges. And you're trying to keep the same edges and lines to follow the contour of the suit. There you go. Other side. All right, so lesson learned, don't let it sit too long. Do it in smaller sections. And there we go. So you can keep working that, because like this one, it's a little too padded. Try to blend this one a little bit more. Remember, everything you want a soft edge, so make sure you're blending your edges out. All right, so after all that, I'm just going to streak down, because if anything, streaking down's fine, because it'd be the way the water, rainwater and stuff would be running on it. So if you're getting like circular action going on or anything like that, just streak it out downward, because that's the way gravity would take it. I think that looks pretty damn good, and I'm gonna have to say this is a successful technique. Not too hard. It doesn't need precision really. So I'm gonna blast through the rest of this kit. I did pre-panel line it, so all the panel lines are already in there. Sprayed it up, and we're just gonna blast through this and see what we get. I'll be back with you in a second. As you can see, I quickly developed another technique of applying the marker. I just hit up all the panel lines, recesses, edges, and then blended it in from there. That worked for me. It was a little quicker. Started using the eraser marker a little bit more and just kept speeding up as I kept going with this technique. Obviously, practice makes perfect. This process is not quick. It took me about 2 to 3 hours just to do an SD, so just upscale that from there if you're doing high grades and master grades. As you can see, I started bringing in more marker color. So for the yellow and red, we went with brown. For the navy blue, we used the black marker. And obviously for the whites, we used the gray marker. This is not a rule. You use whatever feels best for you. You could easily just use the black for everything. Probably be a little dark for my opinion, but you could definitely do it. And it matters how much you blend it anyway. You could definitely get it lighter. So if you just had to buy one marker, go black. What's great about this technique though is you can come back to it later if you feel something wasn't exactly how you want it and touch it up. You're only using a pen and the weathering paint, so it's not too much to have to figure out what you use. You didn't mix anything. You just go back, touch it up, and blend it the way you want. I would strongly recommend to do this properly is to do it all in separate pieces. I went in and just did it. So didn't really strip it down, just did arms, legs, chest, and so on. Be a little better, edges would be a little tighter if it was in pieces. One thing that was very noticeable to me was on the backpack, the quality of the plastic really matters. So this technique will definitely work for SDs, high grades, real grades, master grades, most likely perfect grades. I'm assuming that plastic is pretty good quality, but maybe on those older ones like the original RX-78 or even the Wing, you might have some trouble because there was definitely like waving in the backpack's plastic between like the structural supports of the plastic, and that made it a little harder to do the blends because it kind of like filled into those gaps. So if you ever watch some like the real pros out there who do paint Gundams on YouTube and stuff like that, you will see them sanding what looks like a perfectly flat surface. They'll use like Mr. Surfacer, and you're like, why are they doing that? That's because there are imperfections and waves in the plastic, and they want to make sure that plastic is perfectly flat. The bigger plastic gets, the more waves are between the structural supports. So like a Mega, I think it would be an issue. I mean, that's a cheaper kit for as big as it is. It's like $120 for a Mega, but it's huge, bigger than a perfect grade. So that plastic is definitely not completely on point. As I went along, not only did I get quicker, but my fades got more to my liking. So when you look at like the guards around the shins, the shield, those are much more even blends that I like. I like a much more subtle transition compared to a very dark pre-shade where it like just jumps out at you. I like it nice and subtle, where it's hardly noticeable. You just notice it gets a little bit darker at the edges, but you don't like, wow, it doesn't jump out and smack you in the face. And again, what's great is I probably will go back and fix up some of the spots where it was shaded too darkly for my liking. So why do I use the dot method when I'm using the weathering solution? What I'm trying to do, since we are weathering, is a modulation. Basically, you see this technique a lot in military models where they will say it's olive drab. You will see them using oranges, reds, and brown dots and then blending them into the olive paint to give it variation and modulation, which gives you a lot more interest. We're not using all those colors, so I just figured at least the whites won't be uniform across the whole piece, only because we're doing weathering. If I were trying to go for a cleaner look, I'd probably just run a thinner version of the weathering solution, try to put it all down evenly, and then blend it in. Not sure if that's possible. That's another experiment for the future. Should work in theory, though. To summarize, this technique is pretty simple, very forgiving, can be touched up later if you decide you don't like something. Since you're using very few products, it's very easy to blend it back in again. And no major tools are necessary. I also think this technique can be applied with oil paints. I'm even going to try it with AK's weathering pencils in the near future. So look out for upcoming videos, like, subscribe, and I'll see you later. Peace.